There is a mason jar sitting on the shelf above my workbench. Inside it is a white powder that costs about $9. It has no smell. It looks like baking soda. You could mistake it for something you would bake with if you were not careful. Last summer, I watched a colony of carpenter ants, a colony that had been living under my back porch for 3 years and had survived 2 rounds of professional extermination, disappear completely in 11 days. I did not spray anything. I did not call anyone. I did not tear up the boards. I set out 3 small dishes, put a spoonful of that powder in each one, and waited. By day 3, the traffic slowed. By day 7, it had nearly stopped. By day 11, they were gone. Not relocated, not scattered, gone. My name is Hope Yoder. I document traditional methods, the kind that have been passed down through generations of Amish and rural farming families who never had the option of calling a pest control company every time something crawled where it should not. What I am going to show you today is not new. It is not a trend. It is not something someone invented in a lab last year. It is 3 steps, done in the right order, using materials you can find at any garden center or hardware store, most of them under $15. And before I get into step 1, I want to tell you the part that should bother you a little. The pest control industry in this country earns about $17 billion a year. A significant portion of that comes from ant treatments, and most of those treatments work on a repeat visit model. You call them in May, the ants come back in July. You call them again, they come back in September. You sign an annual contract. The reason they keep coming back is not because the treatment failed. It is because the treatment only kills the ants you can see, and the ants you can see are not the problem. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will understand exactly why the colony keeps surviving, exactly which 3 steps interrupt that survival permanently, and exactly what to put where and when. Let me start with what most people get wrong, because if you do not understand this, none of what follows will make sense. The ants walking across your kitchen counter, across your porch railing, across your garden path, those ants are not looking for a home. They already have one. They are workers, foragers. Their one job is to find food, pick it up, and carry it back to the colony. They are following a scent trail that was laid down by a scout ant, sometimes days earlier. They do not make decisions. They follow chemistry. When you spray those ants with something from the hardware store, you kill the ones you can see. The colony barely notices. A healthy ant colony can have anywhere from 10,000 to 500,000 members. The foragers you are killing represent maybe 2 or 3% of the total population on any given day. The queen, the one individual responsible for producing every ant in that colony, never comes to the surface. She is deep underground, or deep inside a rotting log, or deep inside the wood of your porch, and she is laying eggs every single day. Kill 1,000 workers, and she replaces them in a week. This is why the ants keep coming back. You are pulling weeds without touching the root. What the Amish figured out, not through scientific research, but through generations of watching and adjusting, is that the only way to end an ant problem permanently is to reach the queen. And the only way to reach the queen is through the workers themselves. You do not kill the workers, you use them. You give them something they want to carry home. Step 1 is what I call reading the yard. Before you put anything out, you need to spend about 20 minutes walking your yard, property, and understanding what you are dealing with. This step costs nothing, and most people skip it entirely, which is why most people get partial results. Here is what you are looking for. First, the trails. Ant trails are not random. They follow the same paths every time, because those paths are marked with pheromones, chemical signals that tell every worker in the colony this is the way. Look along the edges of your walkways, along the base of your fence line, along the side of your house where the foundation meets the ground. The trails often look like a faint dark line in the dirt, or you will simply see a steady stream of ants moving in both directions. Mark every trail you find. You do not need to write it down, just note it mentally. You will see a pattern. Second, the entry points. Where are the ants going when they reach your house? There is almost always a gap, a crack in the foundation, a space where a pipe enters the wall, a gap under a door frame, a hole where old caulk has cracked and fallen away. This matters for later. Third, the colony sites. This is the most important part of the walk. You are looking for the nest itself, or, at minimum, the general area where the colony is living. Signs of a colony. A soft, sandy mound with no grass on top. A section of lawn where the grass is thin or dead in a rough circle. A pile of fine wood dust below a wooden structure. A spot along your foundation where the ants seem to converge and disappear into the ground. A rotting stump or log with more ant activity than the surrounding area. You may find one colony site. You may find 3. Large properties sometimes have 5 or 6 separate colonies from different species. Write down or photograph what you find. You are building a map. Now, here is something that matters and that almost no one considers. Not all ants are the same problem. Pavement ants. The small dark ones that build sandy mounds along driveways and sidewalks live in colonies of about 3,000 to 5,000 and are relatively easy to eliminate. Carpenter ants, the large black ants, sometimes with a reddish section in the middle, do not live underground. They excavate wood. If you have carpenter ants, you have a wood problem, not just a soil problem. They are attracted to soft, moist, or decaying wood, and they will hollow out structural beams, porch posts, and floor joists if left long enough. These require a slightly different approach, which I will cover separately before we finish. Fire ants. If you live in the South, you know them, are their own category entirely. Aggressive, painful, and the colonies can be enormous. The same 3-step method works on them, but the timeline is longer and the placement strategy is different. Odorous house ants, the tiny ones that smell faintly like coconut when crushed, are among the hardest to eliminate because their colonies often have multiple queens and multiple nest sites spread across a wide area. Knowing which ant you are dealing with tells you how patient to be and where to focus your effort. If you are unsure what species you have, take a clear, close-up photo of a single ant and search it. You do not need to be an entomologist. You just need to know whether you are dealing with a single queen colony in a fixed location or a multi-queen colony that can spread. Take 20 minutes. Walk the yard. Know what you are working with. That is step 1. Step 2 is the bait. This is the heart of the method, and it is where most people go wrong, even when they are trying to do things the right way. Here's the principle behind it. Ants feed the colony through a process called trophallaxis. A forager finds food, eats some of it, and carries the rest back to the nest. Inside the nest, she transfers that food to other workers, who transfer it further in, toward the queen and the developing larvae. The food moves through the entire colony like a slow chain. If that food contains something that kills ants slowly, not immediately, but over the course of 1 to 3 days, the forager carries it home before she dies. The workers inside carry it further before they die. It reaches the larvae. It reaches, eventually, the queen. Without the queen, the colony cannot reproduce. It collapses on its own. This is why instant kill sprays fail to solve the problem. They kill the forager on contact. She never goes home. The colony never receives what you were trying to deliver. Slow-acting bait is the only tool that reaches the queen. The material I use, the white powder in the mason jar I mentioned at the beginning, is called diatomaceous earth, combined with a bait carrier. But let me explain both components separately, because they serve different functions. The first is the bait matrix. This is what attracts the ants and makes them want to carry it home. Ants are not all attracted to the same things. Some colonies are in a protein-seeking phase. They want meat, grease, eggs. Some colonies are in a sugar-seeking phase. They want anything sweet. The phase changes based on the time of year and what the colony needs at that moment. This is important. If you put out a sugar bait and your colony is in a protein-seeking phase, the workers will ignore it completely, and you will think the method does not work. Here is how to find out which phase your colony is in without any equipment. Set 2 small pieces of food near an active trail, about an inch apart. On one side, put a tiny drop of honey or sugar water. On the other, put a tiny crumb of peanut butter or a small piece of lunch meat. Wait 15 minutes. Whichever one the ants go to, that is the phase they are in right now. If they go to the sugar, you use a sugar-based bait carrier. Corn syrup mixed with the active ingredient works well. Honey works. Simple syrup works. If they go to the protein, you use a protein-based carrier. Peanut butter is the most effective vehicle most people already have at home. A small amount of canned cat food also works remarkably well, which is something the old-timers knew, and the pest control industry prefers you not know because it costs almost nothing. The active ingredient you are combining with whichever carrier they prefer is borax. Borax is a naturally occurring mineral salt. It has been mined and used as a cleaning agent for over 100 years. It is found in the laundry aisle of most grocery stores. The common brand name is 20 Mule Team Borax. A box costs about $5 and will last you multiple seasons. At low concentrations, about 1 part borax to 10 parts bait carrier, borax disrupts an ant's digestive system slowly enough that she can complete the trip back to the nest before it affects her. At high concentrations, it kills too quickly and the forager dies on the trail. This is one of the most common mistakes people make when they try to use borax on their own. They use too much. 1 part borax, 10 parts carrier. That is the ratio. If you are making a sugar bait, 1 teaspoon of borax stirred into 10 teaspoons of corn syrup or honey. Mix it thoroughly until the borax dissolves completely. It should look like slightly cloudy syrup. If you are making a protein bait, 1 teaspoon of borax worked into 10 teaspoons of peanut butter. Mix thoroughly. The texture will not change much. Now, where to put it? This matters more than most people realize. You do not scatter bait randomly around the yard. You place it precisely on or adjacent to the active trails you identified in step 1. Use small, shallow containers, bottle caps, the lids from jars, small squares of aluminum foil folded up at the edges. You want the bait contained so it does not dry out too quickly, and so other animals cannot easily access it in large quantities. Place a station every 3 to 4 feet along each active trail you identified. Put a station as close as possible to each entry point into your house, but outside, not inside. Put a station near each colony site you identified, but not directly on top of it. You want the foragers to find it on their way out, not feel threatened and relocate. Here is the part that requires patience and that separates the people who succeed from the people who give up. Do not disturb the trails while the bait is working. Do not spray anything. Do not sweep the ants away. Do not pour boiling water on the nest. You are letting the colony feed itself to death, and any disruption can cause them. Colony to shift location, abandon the trail, or split, making your problem worse instead of better. You will see more ant activity in the first 2 or 3 days, not less. This is because the bait is working. The foragers are finding it and recruiting more workers to carry it home. More traffic means the bait station is doing exactly what it should do. Refill the stations every 2 to 3 days. If a station has been emptied, that is a good sign. Keep refilling until the traffic stops. For most pavement ant and odorous house ant colonies, you will see a significant reduction in 7 to 14 days. You may see complete elimination in 2 to 3 weeks. For larger carpenter ant colonies or fire ant colonies, allow 3 to 4 weeks before evaluating. If after 2 weeks you see no reduction at all, go back to the food preference test. The colony may have shifted phases. Switch from sugar to protein bait or vice versa and start again. That is step 2. Step 3 is exclusion. This is the step that makes the result permanent instead of temporary. Eliminating one colony does not prevent a new colony from moving in next spring. Ants are territorial, but they are also opportunistic. If the conditions that attracted the first colony still exist, easy entry points, food sources near the foundation, moisture near wood, a new colony will find them. Exclusion means removing those conditions. Start with the entry points you identified in step 1. A tube of exterior caulk costs about $4. A Sunday afternoon with a caulk gun and good light is all you need to seal the gaps along your foundation, around pipe penetrations, along door frames and window frames. Pay particular attention to the line where your porch or deck meets the house. That junction is almost always where carpenter ants find their way in. If you found damage in any wood, soft spots, small piles of fine sawdust that look like ground coffee, galleries visible when you probe with a screwdriver, That wood needs to be addressed. Treated, replaced, or at minimum sealed against further moisture. Ants do not create rot. They move into rot that already exists. Fix the moisture problem, and you fix the ant problem at its root. Next, look at what is touching your house. Firewood stacked against the foundation is an ant hotel. Move it. The old rule is wood stored at least 20 feet from the house and elevated at least 6 inches off the ground. I know that is not always practical, but even moving it to the far side of the yard reduces the problem significantly. Shrubs, ground cover, and mulch pressed directly against the foundation hold moisture and give ants a protected runway right to your wall. Pull the mulch back 6 to 8 inches from the foundation. Trim shrubs so no branch or leaf touches the house. It looks different than you are used to, but it works. Correct any drainage issues that cause water to pool near the foundation. A buried downspout extension is $10. It moves water away from the house instead of letting it sit against the wall and slowly soften the wood inside. Now, there is one more element to exclusion that goes beyond sealing cracks, and this is the part of the Amish approach that surprised me most when I first documented it. The families I have spent time with, the ones who have been managing their properties this way for generations, think about the entire ecosystem of the yard, not just the immediate pest. They plant spearmint and tansy along the foundation perimeter. Both plants produce compounds that ants find actively repellent. Spearmint is easy to grow in almost any zone. Tansy is a hardy perennial that comes back every year without much attention. Neither is a magic solution on its own, but as part of a system, they create a line the ants prefer not to cross. They also maintain ground beetles and predatory insects by leaving sections of the yard undisturbed. A patch of unmowed grass along the fence line, a small brush pile in an unused corner. Ground beetles eat ant eggs and pupae. A yard with a healthy ground beetle population has noticeably fewer ant colonies than a yard that has been chemically sterilized. The chemicals kill both the target and the predator. One of the older farmers I documented this from, a man who has been keeping this property clean of carpenter ants for over 30 years, using nothing from a spray can, said something that stayed with me. He said the English treat pest problems like fires to put out. We treat them like fields to manage. A fire you put out once, a field you tend all season, every season, and it rewards you year after year. That is step 3. Now I want to come back to carpenter ants specifically, because they deserve their own explanation, and because the damage they cause is expensive if you catch it late. Carpenter ants do not eat wood the way termites do. They excavate it. They chew out smooth galleries to nest in. Corridors and chambers with walls so smooth they almost look sanded. They prefer wood that is already soft from moisture. A dry, sound beam is not attractive to them. A beam that has had a slow roof leak dripping on it for 2 years is exactly what they are looking for. This means carpenter ants are almost always a symptom of a moisture problem. If you find carpenter ant activity inside your house, large black ants appearing in the kitchen in January when the ground is frozen, or a regular trail appearing and disappearing along a wall, there is a colony inside the structure, not outside it. That colony found a water-damaged void to live in. The ant problem and the moisture problem must both be solved. The borax bait method still works for carpenter ants, but the placement matters more. You want the bait stations directly on their foraging trails, as close to the entry point as you can manage. Carpenter ants often forage at night, so checking the bait stations in the evening gives you more information about where they are actually moving. They are much more attracted to protein bait than sugar. Peanut butter with borax at the same 1:10 ratio is the most effective delivery vehicle for carpenter ants. Some people add a small amount of cooking oil to the mix, which makes it more appealing when the colony is in a fat-seeking phase in late summer. The timeline for carpenter ant elimination is longer. Allow 4 to 6 weeks before concluding the method has worked or has not. Their colonies are slower, more cautious, and they often have satellite nests connected to the main colony that continue foraging even after the main nest has been treated. Persistence is what wins against carpenter ants. Not stronger chemicals, not more aggressive intervention. Patience with the bait, consistent refilling, and eliminating the moisture source that brought them in. I want to address something that comes up every time I document these methods. People ask, is borax safe? Borax is classified by the EPA as a minimum risk pesticide when used at low concentrations in targeted bait stations. At the concentrations used in this method, 1 part borax to 10 parts carrier, it poses no meaningful risk to humans, pets, or wildlife. The bait stations contain small quantities in contained locations, not broadcast across a surface. It does present some risk to beneficial insects, including bees, if they access the sugar bait directly. This is why you keep the bait in small, covered or semi-covered stations, rather than open dishes, and why you place them along ant trails close to the ground, rather than in open areas where pollinators are active. The families I document this from have been keeping honeybees and managing ants on the same property for generations. They do both. The key is placement that targets ants while minimizing exposure for everything else. Diatomaceous earth, the other material I mentioned at the beginning, is a different tool for a different job. It is not a bait. It does not travel back to the colony. It works by physical contact, cutting through the outer shell of insects that walk through it. It is most useful as a barrier rather than a bait, applied in a thin line along entry points after the colony has been eliminated, as an additional layer of exclusion. Do not use diatomaceous earth on active trails during the baiting phase. It will kill foragers on contact, interrupt the bait delivery, and slow your results. Use it after, as a preventive seal. The full system laid out from start to finish looks like this. On day 1, walk the yard. Identify trails, entry points, colony sites, and species. Do the food preference test. On day 1 or day 2, mix your bait at the correct ratio and place stations on every active trail and near every colony site. Refill stations every 2 to 3 days without disturbing the trails or the colony. Expect more activity before you see less. Between week 1 and week 3, observe the reduction. Switch bait type if there is no activity at the stations after 5 days. At the end of week 3 or 4, when trail activity has stopped, seal all entry points with exterior caulk. Treat any damaged wood. Move wood piles. Pull mulch back from the foundation. Plant deterrents along the perimeter if you are willing to add that layer. Apply diatomaceous earth as a powder barrier along the sealed entry points. After that, walk the perimeter once every 2 weeks through the active season and refresh the diatomaceous earth after heavy rain. That is the full cost of this system. 1 box of borax, $5, will last 2 to 3 seasons. A jar of peanut butter or a bottle of corn syrup, already in most kitchens. A tube of exterior caulk, $4. A bag of diatomaceous earth, $12 to $15, will last a season. A package of spearmint starts or tansy seeds, $5 to $8 if you choose to plant the perimeter. Total first-year cost, under $40. A single professional ant treatment visit averages between $150 and $300, and most companies recommend quarterly visits. You do the math. The reason this knowledge is not common is not because it is complicated. It is because there is no recurring revenue in it. A method that costs $40, takes 1 weekend to set up, and solves the problem permanently for years does not support a service contract. It does not fill a quarterly visit. It does not require a certified technician to apply. Every Amish family I have documented this from learned it from a parent who learned it from a grandparent who learned it from necessity. They could not call a service. They could not afford recurring contracts. They figured out what actually worked, and they passed it down. That is the whole of it. The knowledge existed. It was just not in the places most people know to look. I want to tell you one more thing before we finish. What I have shared in this video is part of a much larger body of traditional knowledge that these communities have maintained for generations. Not just about ants, but about soil, about healing plants, about managing a property through every season without depending on expensive products or outside services. I have spent several years documenting it, verifying it, and organizing it in a way that people outside those communities can actually use. The result is a collection I put together called The Amish Garden Secret, A complete system covering 37 methods across soil building, companion planting, pest management, and natural health, all drawn from direct field documentation. There is also a companion volume called The Backyard Pharmacy, which covers 12 systems for using the plants you are likely already growing for pain relief, wound care, immune support, and more, the way these families have used them for 200 years. Both come with a healing plant index, a full garden calendar, and adaptations for people with limited mobility or strength. If you have found what I shared today useful, the link to get both volumes is in the description below. Everything in them follows the same principle as what I showed you today: verified, practical, low cost, and built to last. Now, before you go, I want to ask you something. Tell me in the comments where you live and what kind of ants you are dealing with. Pavement ants, fire ants, carpenter ants, the tiny ghost ants that seem to appear out of nowhere and go just as fast. Tell me which one, and tell me how long you have been fighting them. I read every comment, and if there is a specific situation enough people are asking about, that becomes the next video. The people who built this country with their hands, and without the option of calling someone to fix their problems, they solved this. They solved it without a subscription and without a chemical company on retainer. You can too. Next time, I am going to show you what these same families do to keep flies out of the barn and the kitchen through the entire summer. A method that costs almost nothing, uses one ingredient from your pantry, and has been working since before anyone alive today was born. Until then, walk your yard, read the trails, follow the steps. The ants are not smarter than 3 generations of farmers who had no other choice but to figure it out.